Hello to you all and welcome to IMPROVATE's first international conference. IMPROVATE is a platform for connecting governments and innovation companies. IMPROVATE's mission is to connect change makers in technology with leaders in governing positions. IMPROVATE is dedicated to find solutions and sparking collaborations that will improve the quality of life for the many. Here with us, IMPROVATE's founder and chairman, Irina Nevzlin. Our special guest today, the Right Honourable Tony Blair, the former Prime Minister of Great Britain and Northern Ireland, and the founder and chairman of the Tony Blair Institute for Global Change. Also with us today are honourable ministers from Israel and Africa, Mr. Yizhar Shai, Minister of Science and Technology from Israel, Mr. Joseph Antoine Kasonga Mukata, Minister of Agriculture, Democratic Republic of Congo. Also with us, Omari Tewebe Gumba, Deputy Minister of Agriculture, Tanzania, Minister Ato Sani Reddy, Minister of Natural Resources Management and Food Security in Ethiopia, Professor Edie Boga, Secretary of the State Department for Crop Development and Agriculture Research, Kenya, Minister Jubalani Mabuza, Minister of Agriculture, Eswatini, Mr. Jonathan Bialosuka Wata, the Minister of Fisheries and Livestock in Congo, Mr. Masima, he is the Ambassador of Tanzania in Israel, and Mrs. Coringanor, Head of Structures and Export Finance at Bank Discount. We will hear today from Israel leading agrotech and innovation companies. They will present solutions here in the studio in the field of food security. Food security has become a burning issue, especially today because of the pandemic. That is why we choose to deal with this issue today. So here at the studio or via Zoom, Netafim, NextFirm, LR Group, ICL, Alphabet Planners, AgroScout, Bioefficiency, Milky, Bermad, and finance company that can help those wonderful tech companies to do business in Africa. Discount Bank, Ashra, East Africa International Finance Corporation, and African Export-Import Bank, Afrexim Bank. Also watching us, representative of investment fund from around the world that are looking for investment in Israel innovation companies. This conference will be the first in a series of international conference held by IMPROVATE to connect between governments and innovation companies. So, let's start. I would like to introduce Irina Nevzlin, the founder and the chair of IMPROVATE. Irina is Israeli entrepreneur. She grew up and started her career in Moscow, continued in London, and now lives in Israel. She's the author of the book, The Impact of Identity, The Power of Knowing Who You Are. Over the last decade, she's a chair of the board in the Museum of the Jewish People. She conducted a $100 million transformation. It is now the biggest Jewish museum in the world, telling the story of unity and success. So, Mrs. Nevzlin, what is the vision behind IMPROVATE?
First, Danny, thank you very much for the question. And I have to tell something. I'm very excited. I'm grateful to everybody who is watching us and who is with us in the studio. It's our first inaugural conference, and we did it at the time when it's hard to imagine it's possible. And it's possible because there is some nice woman looking to me from control room, Ronit Hassin-Hochman, who is my partner and the CEO of the company who made it happen. Now, back to your question. You see, I think we all know that there is a crisis in leadership around the world. We see it everywhere, not just in crisis. It started before. Another problem is that for leaders to lead now, it became much more complicated because the world became so much more complicated. And so in order to lead in times like that, you really need to be able to do the teamwork and to bring different brains together. And what I see is that over the last decade, 2 decades, we really have 2 leadership groups. One is elected politicians, and the other one is tech companies, which are growing in their impact on life of everybody. Now, those two groups are ought to talk together to build a shared language, and this is where we come into place. We want to make sure that these groups come and work to make life better for all of us and for many.
So, Mrs. Nevslin, how can IMPROVATE help the world in those problematic days?
I'm glad you asked. Look, I think a lot of people who are here with us today get invitations to a lot of different gatherings. Now it's mostly online, but it used to be physical, where you have these discussions, which are basically two topics. One topic is issues and hand problems that we have, and the second one is who are we going to blame today for those problems? Now, while I think it's very important to know what problems we have and how we got to that, I also feel that there's a big group of people around the world who want to have another discussion. And the discussion is, okay, we have a problem. There's a theoretical reason why we got to where we got. But what we want to do is come together and find the solutions that will actually make our life better and everybody's lives better. So this is, I think, what IMPROVATE ought to do, especially in the time of crisis.
So that's what we're going to do in the next hours. Thank you, Mrs. Nevslin, for staying with us. And now to London. Hello, Mr. Tony Blair. It is a great honor to have you with us today. Today's meeting focuses on the subject that I know, very close to your heart, food security. Being active in Africa, how do you see the food security challenge in the continent, especially when the COVID pandemic makes a big problem in access to food?
Yeah, first of all, a big congratulations to everyone at IMPROVATE, to Irina and her team for making this get together happening. It's actually a huge tribute to their skill and ingenuity that they've managed to get so many people together on what I think is going to be a really important method of connecting people for the betterment of people in Africa. So food security is, of course, a huge challenge. And it was a challenge before COVID. COVID has deepened that challenge. But there's one other thing that the COVID-19 crisis has done, and that is that any problem that was there before COVID is there now, but accelerated. And the same is true also of the thinking behind the solutions to these problems. So in all the conversations, my institute works in around 15 different African countries with teams of people, and we're about to go into several more, including some of the countries represented on this call. What we find is there's now an enormous interest in the whole question of technology and what it can do to accelerate Africa's development and accelerate the solutions to these long-standing problems. Now, on food security, it's very, very clear. There are still large numbers of people in Africa that go hungry. Africa, just to give you some data points, it imports around $80 billion worth of agricultural produce. It exports 40 billion. So it has a deficit when it should have a huge surplus. The tariffs between African countries on the export of goods between those African countries are high, on average 12%. That means sometimes you have a situation where, for example, in South Africa, it could be actually more, it could be cheaper to import from Argentina than from an African country next door. And then thirdly, you've got a situation where the population of Africa is going to double in the next 30 years. So it's going to go from roughly 1.2 billion people to over 2 billion people. And at the same time, the numbers of people going to the cities is increasing. So this food security question has always been acute. It's even more acute now. And there is literally no way of dealing with this unless there's agricultural transformation in Africa. And that is to do with logistics and infrastructure and food production and scale. But technology has a role to play in each and every one of the issues that affect African agriculture.
Thank you very much, Mr. Blair. We will be talking with you later again. Thank you very much. Now, here in the studio, the Minister Yizhar Shai, or we'll talk about something else now. Minister of Science, that is the right thing. In Israel, Yizhar Shai, Israel is considered an innovation nation. As a minister who only recently entered your position, what are your plans to expose the world to Israeli technology?
Thank you, Danny, and thank you for having me here, Rena and Danny. It's a great honor to be here. Israel is considered as one of the leading hubs of innovation around the world. We are building innovation in various areas of technology and science. And as we are building those areas, we are also always looking forward into what happens next. What are the trends that build the next exciting companies, the next exciting areas for exploration of scientists, technologists, people who build companies, people who build the research within universities. As we look into what happens in the near future, we are looking into the potential of artificial intelligence as one of the most significant worldwide trends, which has a practical implication in almost every aspect of our day-to-day lives. As this applies to our discussion here, AI, artificial intelligence, is very applicable towards the areas of agriculture, of precision agriculture, which is an up-and-coming market trend by itself, and is a basis for cooperation between Israel and, I hope, many nations in Africa, and by the way, around the world as well.
So can you say a word about Israel's startup companies and food security in Africa?
So, as a minister, I'm not allowed to mention names, so I will talk to the market names. Segment. We do see Africa rising over the last decade as a potential market for Israeli companies. Traditionally, Israeli companies, even in the area of agriculture, were focused more on South America, North America, and some areas in the East. Now Africa has become a good trade partner for Israeli companies, for innovation companies that deal with the various aspects of food security. And again, you see companies developing technologies in the area of water technologies. You see companies developing in the areas of food improvements, yield, again, using AI for precision agriculture in order to improve the quality of crops, the quality of agricultural product around many sectors of that market. And we believe that this will also be the basis for much more to come, as the world is now realizing the importance of food technologies, of food security, and agriculture as a whole. I grew up in the Israeli high tech in the 90s. You would not talk about agriculture in the sense of innovation then. Nevertheless, we are 30 years later, which speaks to my age. And now we are talking agriculture as innovation, as an important aspect of the Israeli tech nation, startup nation, and innovation overall.
So with us here in the studio are Corinne Gano, Head of Structured Export Finance at Israel Discount Bank, David Klein, Executive Vice President of ASHRA, Mr. Manuel Moses, Country Manager of East Africa International Finance Corporation, will be joining later. Also René Omberg, Global Head of Client Relations, African Export-Import Bank, Afrexim Bank. Still with us, the Ambassador Masima from Tanzania. Watching us are also representative of investment funds from around the world who are interested in investing in Israel innovation companies. Let's start with a question to Corinne Gano from Israel Discount Bank. What could be the message or the measures to provide assistance to food security issues in Africa?
So thank you for the question. Thank you very much for inviting us first for this very important mission, actually. Whereby I would like to mention that Israel Discount Bank is indeed very active in Africa. And I don't know what is Africa, because we should say Africa, because each country out of Africa is different from the other one. Everyone has its own specificity, own needs, own language and culture. They all need money. The problem is indeed how we can raise these funds. And Israel Discount Bank is a commercial bank. whereby we have regulation, we have Bank of Israel and instruction, and we need to have some very important aid from the government in order to be able to provide our balance sheet and to finance all the beautiful project, obviously in the food security, to these different countries. We are active in Tanzania, we are active in Zambia, in Gabon, in many, many different countries. And yet we need the help of the government through an ECA. And I'm glad that Dodi Klein is here because he will discuss about the ECAs. And in the ECAs, actually, they are taking the risk. Unfortunately, in Israel, we are lacking the full support of the government, which is different of other countries. And I'm sorry that I have to say it here, but we would have liked to see an ECA much stronger to be able to help all these exporters, to help actually the African countries. So this is, it's very important for the local economy as well, because when the export is being dealt, so it brings in so many taxes, so many incomes, employment. So we would have been glad to provide with more financing. Today we are a little bit stopped with that.
When you talk about help from the government, you're talking about the Israeli government or the states in
I am speaking
Africa?
first. The state of Africa is very different because each country has its own ability. Some will provide with their guarantees, some other ones will not provide with a guarantee. So we have to learn about each structure and to be able to adapt it. What I was saying is about the Israel government and in all the industrialized country. There is what is called the Export Credit Agency, who provide lines to the commercial bank to provide, at the end of the day, the funding and the balance sheet of the bank to this beautiful project. And in Israel, there are so many excellent exporters with technology, with knowledge, and the ability to raise major projects. And unfortunately, today, we do not have this help enough. So sorry that I have to say that.
Okay, Dodi Klein from Ashra, what kind of financial solution do you offer companies and African nations for projects on the continent?
Well, Ashra can offer a variety of very comfortable and flexible financial solutions to the African buyers. Of course, we have a lot of solutions like buyer's credit, promissory note, forfeiting, bank-to-bank loans. And the advantage of all these financial solutions is that the African buyers can get from the Israeli exporter the best technology, the most advanced technology in the project with a very attractive financial package. So the African buyer can get the project now and will pay later. He can pay in a very long credit period of 10 to 12 years with a very comfortable terms, meaning that the interest will be very low. So the credit alternative of using Ashra and the Israeli banks is very cheap compared to the other. From the other hand, you have the Israeli exporter that he wants to sell in Africa. And of course, to sell in Africa, you have to offer credit terms. You have to offer long-term credit. So to be more competitive, the Israeli exporter have to offer credit terms of 10, 12, even 15 years. So what we are doing in Ashra, we support the transaction. And by doing that, we're providing the ability to give credit. But of course, that the exporter cannot wait 10 or 12 years for the payments. So by supporting him, we enable him to receive the money immediately after the delivery. So basically what we are doing, we are converting the credit transaction into cash transaction for the benefit of all sides. So in the end of the day, the African buyer will receive the project with the best technology, Israeli technology. The Israeli exporter will complete the transaction, receive the money, and move on to the next transaction and will do more export. And the banks will make a loan to the African buyer with a guarantee of Ashra, which is equal to the guarantee of the State of Israel, that will enable Bank Discount and other banks to make the loan in a very cheap interest.
Thank you, Dudi and Corinne. You'll stay with us, please. Joining us via Zoom, Mr. Manuel Moses, Country Manager, East Africa International Finance Corporation. The World Bank finances many projects in Africa in the field of agriculture in general. What is the scope of your investments in Africa?
Good afternoon. I'll say good afternoon to all of you, and thank you for having me. Yeah, we at the IFC, part of the World Bank Group, are also very keen on promoting agricultural productivity. We do support investments in agriculture. We do support the transfer of technology that improves the productivity of the farmers in Africa. We do support also the commercialization of agriculture. So what we do is, as the previous speaker has said, is to provide financing that is necessary to bring the technology to the continent. So we are a financier, and we are willing to partner with exporters who have technology that we need so that it can be deployed in the continent. So this is how we approach it. We have a big program in Africa. We do an average of about $5 billion of investments, and about 20% of that is in the agricultural space. So we're very, very big in agriculture and really want to promote the transfer of technology into the continent, especially in agriculture. And we're happy that we're here talking to one of the best technology providers in agriculture, which is your country, Israel. So we're really, supportive of whatever you want to do in the continent, and we'll be able to also, support in terms of building capacity, for the farmers. It's not just the technology, but how to do it. So this is how we want to partner with, technology providers coming from Israel.
And how?
Thank you. I hope that answers.
No, Mr. Moses, how can you help Israeli technology firms to do business in Africa?
So I think they are providing technology, and what normally is the issue is the financing. So we are a financial institution. So we do then support, either the commercial farmer here or the person who wants to deploy the technology with the financing that they need, so that they can bring the technology over. So, but also we will also be willing to finance the capacity building that is required to be able to utilize that technology in the continent. So if there is, for example, need for training by an exporter based in Israel, in Africa, to come and build capacity in the continent, we are also happy to provide the technical assistance, support, so that that technology is transferred and it is used well. And also we are happy to do long-term financing, so that the buyer here does not have to fork out all the money at the same time. So the idea of using buyer credit and also supporting through letters of credit and all those financial instruments, we are able to do that, either working with the banks or working with the farmers directly. But agriculture is very, very important in the continent, and we want to be part of that support.
Of course, Mr. Manuel Moses, International Finance Corporation, thank you very much for joining us. Now we'll be talking with René Omberg, Global Head of Client Relations, African Export-Import. Hello to you. How are you supporting international companies in doing projects in Africa?
Thank you very much for giving us the opportunity as the Trade Finance Bank for Africa to participate in this webinar on food security in Africa. We are all living through challenging times where our continent has been ridden by floods, by droughts, by famine in different places, including the challenges of the pandemic, disruptions to supply chain. So as you know, the African Export-Import Bank was established under the auspices of the African Development Bank as a Pan-African multilateral trade finance institution. We function as an international public sector, private sector partnership, whose mandate is to finance and promote intra-African and extra-African trade. We do use three broad services. The first one is credit, providing trade and project finance to our stakeholders. risk-bearing instruments like guarantees and credit insurance, and then trade information and advisory. The bank works across the whole continent, all countries of the continent. We have our headquarters in Cairo, and we have branch offices in Harare, in Abuja, Abidjan, Kampala, and very soon Douala, covering 51 participating member countries. The bank is a rated institution by both Moody's, Fitch, and GCR. As part of the 5th strategic plan of the bank, one of the key pillars is industrialization and export development. So we are working with providers like yourselves from Israel, we can benefit from the transfer of technology into Africa to develop industrial parks for agriculture to help with import substitution and to help with trying to process, grow, or transform some of our local foods for domestic consumption, which will then reduce the burden of trade deficits because African countries don't have to import. So we use our instruments of either providing credit, providing guarantees, working through financial intermediaries, financial institutions, to be able to support both domestic, international, regional, and government players in the sector of agriculture. Thank you.
Mr. Omberg, thank you again, African Export-Import Bank. Thank you again for your words. We welcome back. Thank you, Mr. Omberg. If I have a firm and I want to do business in Africa,
sure.
I need money to finance the activity.
What should I do?
Yes, of course. This is what Ashra is for. Ashra is aiming to promote the exports. So the situation in Africa is always, there is a need of finance, there is a need of money, because there is a need for a lot of things in Africa, farms, hospital, everything. But in order to succeed, you have to be able to offer the African buyer a financial package. That meaning that the African can buy, but he cannot pay everything in cash, usually. Usually he wants a credit, like he wants to pay like in 5 years, in 10 years, in 15 years. And what we are doing as Ashra, as a government agency, we are taking the risk of the buyer. And by doing that, we're enabling the African buyer to pay in a long term. So this usually the key question. When you start negotiating, usually the first question is what are you selling? The second question is, can you provide us with a financial solution? And if you want financial solution, you have to come to Ashra, because the banks are financing, but only if Ashra is covering it.
We have the African banks and the Israeli banks.
Israeli banks, yes, that's it. I would like just to continue on that and saying that so many marketing people are coming to the finance people saying, look, I have the major transaction. If we have financing, so we can do the deal. But it's not true. And as I just started to say, indeed, if you do not come with a very precise business plan, and if you do not check internally, where is this project budgetized? Is it a true story, not a true story? And then these companies, the financial people of those companies, has to come to the financial people, Ashra, the commercial bank, and to discuss the structuring. And it has to be done at a very earlier stage, because very often we say, look, it's not serious. And then afterward, we help them to structure them. We do not only provide with the balance sheet of the bank, obviously, but indeed we are advising them about the real structure to be done.
Businesses are businesses, but what is the difference by doing businesses in Africa, or special problems, if I can say?
Okay.
Who wants to answer?
I can continue, but I'm not okay. As you want.
Okay. In Africa, there is a problem of culture. The Israeli culture or the United States culture is not as the Africa culture. So I think that it's very important to involve it into the financial report. For example, it takes time from time to time to pass the machine from one country to another. So there is lots of cases like that you need to take ahead in account. And you see it as you build the finance program plan.
Ambassador Massima.
Yes. I agree with them, but one of the biggest problems we are facing is on interest rate and the grace period. That will come with those which apply to your countries, thinking that they will apply also to Africa. We needed to consider that one. We were starting a new project, it hasn't matured, and then already the interest rate is taking place. You could find, for instance, now, I suspect that a number of African countries are going to face a problem because with the loans they are having, now they are getting another loans for the COVID-19. The question is, why can't you keep it on hold, the interest rate? Because with the COVID-19, nothing is moving. Now you are giving us another loan for that one. So in 2 to 3 years' time, you could find that Africa is in problems simply because we are having those loans which you took from the banks and other institutions, and also from the corona-related whatever, which came out with that one. So we need to look on that one. That's why we are saying that it's high time. Instead of you giving us loans at this time, suspend those loans. Right. So that we can manage this, because we are in a tight corner now. How can you manage to pay your debt and also to service this loan? At the same time, we get a loan from other countries. This is very, very difficult and is going to cost a number of countries in Africa.
So I thank you very much for this, because I started this discussion saying that when you are actually borrowing from commercial bank, so we have to report to the Bank of Israel, to our shareholders, and this is why we need actually the help of the government. So I start with that because a commercial bank, indeed, we lend money, we have to receive it back. And we are mainly facing many issues in Africa because indeed we provide funds, we need to receive it back, and we fully understand that. So we are trying to managing everything, and it's very, very complicated. But we want to do it.
Ambassador Massimo, as the representative of the African continent here is in that table, what companies from Israel doesn't know about doing business in Africa?
Yeah, first is that the culture issue, which Dr. Ayala pointed out. It seems that they wanted to bring with...
Give me one kind of a mistake.
When we're talking
usually.
Yes. For instance, if I come here in Israel,
yes,
I need to know the culture of how the kosher food is and whatever. But if you come to Tanzania, you don't ignore that part. You would like to move with your Israeli cultures. And I would like to go much to those sensitive issues. But please, make sure that...
Kind of a common mistake that you can point on.
Yeah, for instance, you could find that a number of companies, once they wanted to deal with something, they wanted to talk with the head of state. That, please, am I going to meet your president?
Yeah.
What's that? We are here to do that one.
Yes.
So we could think that it might be easy to other places, but one will come out, ultimately, his intention is to meet the head of state.
That's it from IMPROVATE Food Security in Africa. We have heard today about the needs of Kenya and Ghana, Ethiopia, Congo, and Tanzania in the field of food security. We received an overview of the continent from Honorable Tony Blair with us here in Israel, Ministers of Agriculture and Science and Technologies. We were exposed to leading Israeli agri-tech companies that can help the problems of food security. IMPROVATE's next conference will be on the topic of upgrading agriculture through smart agricultural technologies in Eastern Europe, and will take place in October 29th, 2020, chaired by the former Bulgarian President Rosen Plevneliev and agriculture ministers from Eastern Europe. Thank you all. Let's hope for better days for everybody, health for everybody. Thank you.